Hello and welcome back to another video. This video is really quick and it's going to explain to you exactly what steps you need to take to easily write a level 8 to 9 essay for English literature. Let's get into it. So there are few different steps that you need to take, really simple steps, and I'm going to go through them one by one and explain to you how you can structure your essays in order to make them extremely successful. So the first step in your essay structure is going to be your statement. Now your statement is your opinion, what you think, your clever ideas on that character or that theme. There's no particular right or wrong answer here. It is literally just, what do you think? What is your opinion? The second part of the structure is your quotation. And a quotation does not have to be word for word from the text. It can be one word from the text. It can be making reference to something that happens in the text. You do not lose marks for that. You do have to remember that it's not the quote or the textual reference that you use, but it's what you do with it. But that quote is there to support whatever you have written in your statement. It's there to support your opinion. The third part of the structure is your inference. Now, when you make an inference, that's where you start to explore the quote. It's your own personal interpretation of that quote or textual reference. You will more than likely use phrases like, this suggests, this highlights, this exemplifies, this may indicate, this may imply. Okay, so you're not making any certain statements, you're saying what this could mean, what it could be about, where it really shows the examiner that you can look into a quote and try and interpret it in more than one way. And it's always really good to try and make sure that you've got more than one inference for whatever quote or textual reference that you've used. Now, number 4 of the structure is your method. Now, the method comes directly from your choice of quotation or textual reference. And what you are doing here is that you are picking up on a language or structural choice that the writer or the author or the poet has made. This could be something like a simile that's within your quote or textual reference. This could be something like the use of tone within a play, like how the character's saying something. This could be the use of something more obviously structural. So what happens at the beginning of the poem, what happens at the end of the poem. This could be about pace. This is literally anything that you feel that that writer or that author or that poet has done on purpose that is relevant to and exemplified in that quotation or textual reference that you've mentioned earlier. Then the 5th step is the effect. So based off whatever method you have picked up on, what is the effect of that method? And what we mean by effect here is, what impact does this have on the reader or the audience? What does this make us think, feel, imagine, or understand? And those are the 4 key words I would always use for the effect. Think, feel, imagine, or understand. And you wouldn't use them all together, you would just use one of them or maybe 2 of them maximum, just to really show the examiner that you've got ideas about this play or this novel and that you truly understand the reference that you've chosen to pick and put into your response. And then finally is context. Now, context won't necessarily come into every single one of your paragraphs within your essay, but it's something that should be weaved in and out of your essay. The context can link to the historical context, what was going on in history at that time, the social context, what was going on socially within the time period when that play or that poem or that novella was written, or it could be contextual that's happened, bringing the context of that moment. For instance, if you're talking about Romeo choosing to kill Tybalt, you need to put that within context of why that is such a pivotal moment for Romeo, because we know that he's already married to Juliet. That's the context of the moment. So please don't think that context just means putting And this is relevant to 1931 because no, context is where you show the examiner that you can talk about that quotation, that textual reference in a wider aspect and you understand the wider importance of that particular moment. Now, I've chosen a question from an inspector calls just to exemplify how you can use this structure to be extremely successful. So the question that I've chosen is, how successfully is the idea of collective responsibility explored in this play through the use of the inspector? Write about Priestley's ideas about collective responsibility in an inspector calls and how Priestley uses the inspector to present these views. Now, of course, this is worth 30 marks on the AQA paper and 4 marks for AO4, which is your spelling, punctuation and grammar. First thing we'd do is we'd underline the keywords in the question. Now, the keywords are how successfully, this is where your opinion starts to come in, collective responsibility explored, so show the examiner that you understand the concept of collective responsibility and use the main foci of this question is going to be the inspector. So throughout your essay, you should be consistently making reference to him. That's not to say you cannot bring in other characters, but we need to always bring it back to the inspector because that's what the examiner is asking you for. Now, here is an example of how you can use my easy structure to have a successful start to a response. Priestley cleverly uses the inspector as a tool to warn the audience about the consequences of both their individual and collective actions. So that's my statement, that's my opinion. The inspector makes it clear that what happens to other people is directly linked with what we think and say and do. So I've put my quotation in there as well, it's a direct quotation, and also I've embedded it into the sentence just so it flows with what I'm saying. Next comes my inferences, suggesting that our actions can affect other people immensely, especially when we purposely choose to say or do something to them, as the consequences are then out of our immediate control and can be far reaching. So I've made 2 inferences and I've started to explore the quote. Now I'm moving to the methodology. The inspector makes use of listing by mentioning the verbs think, say, and do. And this is to make it clear to the Burling family that unless they change their mindset, their physical actions, and their choice of words towards others, people will continue to be negatively affected by them, just as Eva was. By using the personal pronoun we, the inspector makes it clear that we are all one community and that when we forget this is when. So in that section, I've picked out a couple of methods. I've talked about the use of listing, I've talked about verbs, and I've also talked about the use of personal pronoun. Then I move on, of course, to the next part, which is the effect. This helps the audience to understand that we have to really consider the wider impacts of what we do and say prior to acting. This is something that must be considered on a daily basis and should feed into our interactions with others. So therefore the effect, I've chosen to use that keyword understand and talk about what the audience can take away from this. And then finally, that contextual link. This directly links with the fact that the play is set just prior to World War I, a time when people were not acting as if their actions affected others, which led to one of the biggest tragedies in history. Highlighting this tragedy is Priestley's successful way of indicating how grave things can get when there is no sense of collective responsibility. So I've used those keywords in the question, collective responsibility. I've linked it to the time and the historical context, but I've also talked about why that historical context is important. Now, of course, this is one paragraph using my structure, and what you would need to do is do this a few times to really show the examiner that you know exactly what you're talking about. And I also must say that I want you to think of this structure as a list of ingredients rather than a recipe. It doesn't matter if you do the method before the inferences. All that matters is that you've got all of these things in there because the quotations, the inferences, the methods, the context are all essential parts of the mark scheme. So by missing any of these things out throughout your essay, you are basically just giving away marks. So it's really important to have each part of the structure within your full essay, but they don't necessarily have to be in that perfect particular order. Well done for making it to the end of this video. What I really want you to do is go away and practice this. Use the question that I've put into this video, but also have a look online and get some other questions and practice using this easy structural way of structuring your essays, and you will find that you are writing at a grade 8 to 9 in no time. As always, please remember to subscribe, to like, to comment, and always share. Share with anyone who you know is doing their exams this year and could just do with that little bit of help to structure their essays, particularly those of you who are looking for those high grades. And I'll see you in the next video.